Chainsaw Man just dropped one of the darkest chapters that we've seen in part 2, and arguably the entire series itself. On the surface, chapter 212 looks more like Fujimoto's usual mix of crude humor, horny Denji, and bizarre devil contracts being revealed, but if you dig deeper beneath the surface, this chapter might be one of the most disturbing exploitations of Denji's greatest weakness yet. And it is a stark reminder of the fact that we're just 1 year removed of the guy being put into civilization, learning social norms, and he's being taken advantage of. From Makima's manipulation in part 1, to Yoru's conflicted feelings in part 2, to Denji having the Death Devil teasing him, and now Fumiko's twisted backstory reveal, every single woman in Denji's life, they have been using him. And the scariest part, you can argue he still doesn't fully realize it yet. In this review, we're going to break down how Denji's lack of control over his desires could be the one thing that ends up destroying him, why Yoru's love for him is more than just a devil's whim, and how Fumiko, her horrifying contract with the STD Devil, connects to real-world exploitation in Japan during the 1990s, which is when Chainsaw Man was set. Buckle up, because this is not going to be your typical Chainsaw Man breakdown. Like we've been doing with the last few reviews, we're going to go way deeper beneath the surface, because Fujimoto's getting into some dark stuff. So, chapter 212 continues Fujimoto's recurring theme of Denji being manipulated by women, not through outright physical domination, but through his adolescent desires and his desperate longing for intimacy, because he's trying to fill a hole in his heart. From part 1 with Makima to the mysterious panty-flashing Death Devil to Yoru and now Fumiko, Denji is in a constant cycle where women leverage his sexual naive nature and his emotional loneliness to achieve their goals. This chapter underscores the idea that Denji's greatest weakness isn't his lack of strength, but his lack of control over his sexual impulses, because just getting a nude photograph of Fumiko was enough for the guy to say, hey, she really is a good girl. So we're going to start with Denji's sexual vulnerability as his true downfall. This chapter immediately sets the tone with Denji being distracted by the Death Devil panties, unable to fully absorb the strategy that's being given to him. This small gag, while it is funny, it is emblematic of Denji's arc. No matter how much he grows as Chainsaw Man, no matter how much he grows as a person, he still struggles to separate his adolescent urges from reality, because again, he's a year removed from being out there on his own. His thoughts while he's laying in the nurse's office, wondering if it's okay to jack off right there in the spot, it shows that his sexual curiosity, it is a constant distraction, and it's also a nod to a porn addiction, because that's one of the signs there. His first thought goes towards, hey, I gotta get one off. Fujimoto is making the point that Denji's downfall will not come from a devil out-muscling him, but it will come from his inability to resist manipulation through desire. It's a continuation of Makima's control in part 1. She weaponized his longing for love, sex, and a family. Now in part 2, the Death Devil flaunts herself. Yoru keeps Denji close with an unspoken possibility of romance that she may truly want because of the crossing over feelings of Asa Mitaka, and Fumiko outright uses her body to coax him into compliance to get what she wants. Despite never actually having sex, minus Yoru getting one off for him by giving him a hand job, Denji's undoing may come from never being able to think clearly in these situations, because he's thinking with the wrong head. Then when you get into Yoru's feelings for Denji, the Mitaka influence is growing. One of the more striking moments in this chapter is Fumiko's explanation for why Yoru hasn't turned Denji into a weapon. It's quite simple. It's love. While Yoru herself has been portrayed as hostile, arrogant, manipulative, and she even said herself, like, I guess I don't love Denji, I love America. It should be worth noting that this revelation, it reframes her actions. Fumiko's being used to give us another perspective of Yoru. Now, whether or not you want to say Fumiko is a reliable narrator, that's up for debate. Yoru's attachment, in my opinion, is almost certainly not entirely her own. It is influenced by Mitaka's feelings for Denji. Since the two, they share the same body, they have emotional bleed over, that will make sense because their thoughts intertwine. Mitaka has shown a genuine care for Denji. It's conflicted, but it is real. And so that sincerity should seep into Yoru, and that does seem like it's limiting her ruthlessness. This creates one of the most fascinating tensions in Chainsaw Man Part 2. Denji, the boy who was always used by women, may be genuinely loved by someone for the first time, arguably the second time depending on how you felt about Reze, albeit this is through a fractured psyche of a girl who shares her body with a devil. Love becomes not only Denji's potential salvation, but also Yoru's corruption. The war devil meant to turn him into a weapon initially, and she is restrained by the most human emotion. In just one sentence, Fujimoto has managed to humanize a devil character. Then when you get into Fumiko's tragic contract, this is really dark because it is a childhood exploitation being told to us without us getting the full details, but you can fill in the blanks. So the heart of this chapter, in my opinion, does lie in Fumiko's shocking confession about her contract with the STD Devil. So at the age of 14, she entered into a deal that allows her to replicate herself with anyone that she has sex with. The implication, it is horrifying when you think about it. Fumiko was used to sex at an age where she was still a child, producing copies for political and military use. Whether or not public safety orchestrated her contract, or they simply capitalize on it. Either way, Fujimoto is painting her backstory as a disturbing blend of sex trafficking and a state of exploitation, especially if you go the route of public safety knew about her contract and pushed her to do the things that she did. To grasp the gravity of this, it's worth noting to look at Japan's legal and cultural context. The age of consent in the Japanese Penal Code was 13, but under prefectural youth protection ordinances, it effectively raised it to 16 to 18 depending on what part of the country you're in. In the 1990s, which is the time period that Chainsaw Man takes place in, Japan faced international criticism for issues like the Enjo Kosei boom, which is the compensated dating boom, where schoolgirls were being paid by older men for dates, and they were supposed to stop just short of sexual activities. But when you dig into it, there's quite a few instances where girls have talked and they were taken advantage of, or it did turn sexual. Reports from this era, they tie into the practice of underground trafficking networks and even police indifference. Against this backdrop, now that you have that information, Fumiko's story resonates very chillingly. A 14-year-old child coerced into sexual contracts in the name of societal gain. Because again, we can read between the lines and say that public safety was pushing her to use her contract in this way. Her pause when Denji asks her if she's alive, it underscores that trauma, in my opinion. For Fumiko's existence, it isn't a gift but a curse when you think about it. She is functionally immortal through her copies, yet she is defined by a sexual exploitation because in order to make those copies, she's got to let whatever person she's having sex with bang her. Her use of a nude photo to manipulate Denji is not just manipulation, it's tragic. It is proof that she has internalized her exploitation, believing her body is the only bargaining tool that she possesses. Notice that she's asking for a favor from Denji, and her way of getting the favor is to show a nude photo of herself. Very subtle, but very in your face at the same time. Now, with Denji's blindness and how he's calling Fumiko a good girl, that just builds on it. And it, in a way, intertwines Denji and Fumiko in terms of the sad parts of their characters that are being put on display here, but they're not being shoved in your face. So this is perhaps the cruel irony, is that it's Denji's response to getting the photo. After Fumiko spins her manipulative story, which it is true, but it is manipulative, she hands him a nude photo. Denji still mutters that she is a good girl. This highlights his unshakable naive nature. Unlike readers who can see the manipulation, Denji is clinging to even the shallowest form of kindness, and also because he's horny. Now he's gonna be able to get one off, and he's got a photo while he holds on to his little Chainsaw Man Jr. Fumiko is pointing to the tragic cycle, or she's being used to point to the tragic cycle. Denji is desperate for intimacy, and that leads to him mistaking exploitation for affection. And this leads us to a bigger pattern. Women and Denji's curse. From Makima to Fumiko, Fujimoto has woven a consistent theme. Women, they shaped Denji's life through manipulation. Makima promised him love and a family, but used him as a weapon against devils and was using him for her own purpose. Yoru seeks to have his body as a weapon, at least that's how she started out. But Mitaka's genuine love, it complicates this now. Death Devil flaunts herself to distract him, to win him over, playing into his libido issues. Fumiko weaponizes her tragic past, her body, and her lies and her sexual nature are used to recruit him for her own purposes. What ties this all together is Denji's vulnerability. His dream has always been simple: to live a normal life, to touch a woman, to have companionship. Yet this very dream makes him the easiest pawn in this world of devils and manipulative humans. He hasn't had sex with any of these women, not yet. Yet sex and his inability to control his desires remains the most dangerous weapon pointed at him, not any devil's fangs. This in a way is Fujimoto's warning as well as social commentary. Chapter 212 shows that Fujimoto isn't just writing gory devil battles, he's dissecting how exploitation works on a huge level, particularly sexual exploitation of the vulnerable. Denji, despite his powers, remains emotionally fragile, always pulled by the promise of intimacy. Yoru's complicated love and Fumiko's tragic, twisted contract both reveal how desire is manipulated on a personal and a systemic level. In the end, the question is whether or not Denji can break free of this cycle. Can he learn to see past manipulation, or will his longing for touch and love always be a chain that drags him back down? Obviously, if you enjoyed this review, consider subscribing, clicking here on the left to check out more Chainsman content, or click here to check out other videos that are on the Anime Explained channel.